mom become a New York Times best-selling author twice. She debuted at number 8. She's delighted. The book is great. If you don't have a copy yet, you can get it at aboutyourfather.com/book. That's basically what I was going to do. I was going to go on Fox and Friends or Good Morning America, or I forget which one, and sell my mom's book. But before I zoomed in, there was another guest, Andrew Cuomo, in fact, who said the following. He said, and I quote, that no measure, no matter how drastic or draconian, should be deemed unjustified if it results in saving a single life. He was talking, of course, about relaxing the lockdown and the pros and cons of doing so. And it really struck me. In fact, it reminded me of something I had written a couple of months earlier about Safety Third. If you're a fan of Dirty Jobs, you know that Safety Third was a special I did back in 2008 that examined the unintended consequences of safety first orthodoxy and challenged the idea that telling people that their safety was the most important thing was a good idea. In fact, I argue that it's a very bad idea, and that when people start to believe that someone else cares more about their safety than they do, you wind up with a sense of complacency that leads to all kinds of occupational and vocational accidents. So Safety Third became a rallying cry for me and my crew on Dirty Jobs to remind each other that our safety was fundamentally our responsibility. And it was also a fun way to stir up a conversation around some pretty important issues: homeostatic risk, risk equilibrium, risk compensation or compensatory risk, all these ideas that I'm really interested in. And I was reminded of all of that as Governor Cuomo told the country that nothing was more important to him than our safety. And to be honest, I just found it egregious. It's the same nonsense you hear on United Airlines. When you sit down and they say, here at United Airlines or American Airlines, they all say the same thing. Here at blankety blank airlines, your safety is our top priority. They tell you this moments before they invite you to strap yourself into an aluminum tube and defy gravity by hurtling through space at 700 miles an hour. Of course, your safety is not the top priority. Our safety is important. Safety always, right? But to say it's the top thing, and to say that no price is too high in order to save a single life, well, that was hard to listen to. As of now, 33 million people are unemployed. The country is headed toward a very, very, very difficult time, and a deadly time. Poverty kills people too. This virus is a serious thing, and I supported the quarantine when it began, and I support it now in some areas. But I've never supported the idea that we should treat Newark, New Jersey the same way that we treat Bismarck, or Scottsdale like Manhattan. It just never made sense. But that's what we did. That's how we started the lockdown. And now we're having this conversation that's really dividing the country. People who want to see the lockdowns rolled back are routinely described as impatient, irresponsible, money grubbing. And to be fair, people who are arguing to extend the quarantine, they're being described as cowardly and uninformed. And it's just fascinating. We're trapped again in this prison of two ideas where it's a completely binary world, and for some reason it has to be all of this or all of that. Anyway, I wrote A Novel Hero, I think, because after listening to Cuomo, I did this interview and shared a lot of the same ideas on TV that I shared just now, and I got some pushback. People went to Facebook to tell me that I had somehow managed to get my head all the way up my butt, and they wanted to challenge me on these ideas, which I welcome. I love it. But it's very, very difficult to be understood in a soundbite or a quick burst. And so to some people, I may have come off sounding flip or glib. Look, safety is incredibly important. I know that. I say safety third just to stir things up and make people think about the reality of business. Companies don't exist to keep their employees safe. That's not the reason American Airlines exists. And if Cuomo was serious about employing any measure to save just a single life, well then, why not knock the speed limit down to 20 miles an hour and require motorists to wear helmets and outlaw left turns? That would save 40,000 lives a year. But of course, he won't do that. No governor would. And nobody would support that because deep down, we all know that safety is not the most important thing. There are times when it is top of mind, but never in the history of the country has it gone on indefinitely. And yet, Zeke Emanuel just said we should stay locked down for another 18 months. And Bill Gates is arguing for a national lockdown to go for another 10 months. So, look, smart people have different opinions. I can respect that. But I can't respect the big platitudinous bowl of warm milk that says nothing is more important than our own safety. So I shared my idea about safety third on the air and spent the last couple of weeks defending my position. And somewhere in the midst of all that, I wrote a story called A Novel Hero. Why? Because Charles Dickens, I think, found himself faced with a similar choice, a binary choice. He's a selfish guy. He's having an affair. He's living a lie. He's trying to protect his reputation. He wants to avoid scandal. Suddenly, he's in the midst of this calamity, and he has to decide. Does he turn tail and run? No, he goes back in. He gets his mistress out. Then he gets his mistress-in-law. And then he makes an even braver call. He goes back in. He helps everyone he can. And then he goes into the ravine and spends hours down there as a first responder. Ask a first responder if safety is first. See what they say. They'll laugh. Safety first is insane. There would never be a soldier or a fireman or a cop. Bravery itself requires that something be more important than safety. And so you can get away with it for a while. You can tell the country for a while that in the interest of public health, we're going to have to do this thing. We're going to have to pretend like safety is the most important thing. But it won't last. It never does. In London, in 1939, you might recall the Germans dropped bombs every day, hundreds of bombs. The bombings were awful. The people stayed hunkered down for weeks at a time. But then they emerged before the bombing stopped. They opened up shops before the bombing stopped. They opened up schools even as the bombs were falling because the Brits got bored of being terrified. I think something like that is happening in our country, and I think it's important to understand that as we come out of this thing, it's going to be ugly, and the conversations are going to be heated. And one group is going to point to 60 or 70,000 fatalities, and another is going to point to 30 or 40 million people who've lost their livelihoods. And we're going to have to make a tough choice. Anyway, I think that's why I wrote about Dickens. He had to make a tough choice. In the end, he went from being a selfish guy to a selfless guy. And he put other people's well-being ahead of his own. You can't do that in a safety-first world. You just can't. Anyway, I'll be back next week with another story. I think. I'm going to try. I'm going to try and write one tomorrow, but the situation is fluid. It's a busy time and a weird time and a difficult time to concentrate, if I'm being honest. But it was nice of you to listen to this 10-minute and 30-second ramble. I appreciate it. Whatever you decide, staying in, venturing out, be safe about it. All right, see you later.